Hello, today we'll be looking at this stuff. But just before we get into it, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe and click on the little bell icon if you want to know when I'm uploading bits. So, another of the 4 cameras that all came at once from Banggood. This is the Foxeer Predator 4 Micro, and it came as a bundle with this ClearTX VTX, and I figured you'd be able to get them separately, but I couldn't actually find that currently. It may change. I could only find like the Foxeer Micro 3s, but not the 4s. Anyway, this is the 4 and it comes with this one at the moment, so I'll be looking at both of them. Although, you know, individually you can judge them as you like, because I'm sure you'll be able to get this on its own. Anyway, let's open up the box and see what we get. And a sheet of nothingness. The camera itself, which is a kind of normal micro dimensions. This is the now getting even more popular 1.8mm lens. This has got the little plugs in it as they normally do, but there is a one that has pad versions, so you can solder directly to it if you want to minimise that, because sometimes when you're trying to lean back that can get caught against something depending on your quad, so that's quite a nice touch. This is another camera that will do an OSD display, which will give more information like your voltage on screen and stuff if you haven't already got that sort of OSD. Useful in sort of micro builds. I tend to think of these as like little sort of tiny wings where you're not putting a flight controller in and you want to know your voltage and stuff. Elsewhere in the box we get the traditionally large and impeccably folded Foxeer sheet of instructions, which essentially just goes through, oh, they're not very big this time, essentially just goes through the OSD mainly in English and Chinese. And then we get the little box of goodies, which in this case will contain several versions of wires and plugs, some washers, screws, and a little connector, which is quite handy. I'm always finding that I'm often plugging into flight controllers which have plugs now rather than solder points, and then I spend a long time looking for the right size and being able to take the pins out and put the pins back in again. I quite like having that. Also, a mount and the OSD board, always useful to have. Foxeer always include them. Runcam don't seem to be including them. I don't know if they're just assuming everyone's got one, which is great unless it's your very first camera, then you're like, how do I change anything? But yeah, that's the camera stuff. The VTX contains the VTX itself, which has already got a plug wired in, which has got the basic, this looks like power, ground and video, and then it's got an extra couple. I think this is probably power out to power the camera, and it's got this extra pin here which it's labelled as UART control. It hasn't said, because it says available from menu in Betaflight and it's UART control, but it hasn't said whether it uses smart audio or the tramp protocol, which is a bit mysterious. Maybe they didn't know when they wrote the instructions, but we'll find out eventually. Trial and error means it can only be one of the two, doesn't it? Also in here, another one of these little connectors and a couple of little O-rings, which is interesting. The O-ring is for putting in between the antenna and the MMCX adapter here, and the idea is you put it around the antenna and then you clip it in. I don't know if it's working as a spacer. You will notice, however, one glaring omission they have from this is they haven't included an MMCX antenna, so you'll have to find one of those from elsewhere or order one, I guess. I'm sure Foxeer sell them, as many others do. It's just a bit weird they don't put anything in there, even if it's just like a linear. I find that odd. And finally, you got the instructions. Quite brief, and it still doesn't mention whether it's smart audio or tramp in there. Anyway, it seems only fitting that we connect these together somehow and try and fly something with it and run through the camera and see how it works. So let's take a closer look. So for those of you thinking that's a weird looking quad, you'd be right. It's because it's the fuselage section of the flux wing. I thought I'd do something a little bit different. Put this on a wing because I don't fly much fixed wing and I'd like to do a bit more, and this was one that I wanted to come back to and do some stuff on it. It's quite difficult to see exactly how this is installed, but yeah, essentially we've got the camera there at the start. The VTX will lay there. There's an MMCX coming out to an SMA which will mount on top there. You'll also notice I've got the little adapter on to do the OSD, because I thought I need to sort out, see if that's got anything on it. Need to work out whether this is using smart audio or tramp or something else, so that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so what we can see here is we've got, let's take the lens cap off. As you can see, that's me there. Put that back on. It's an interesting blue hue through there. But yeah, we've got some OSD information which we could get rid of, but it certainly shows you that you've got it should you want it. So I'm just going to go into the menu here. At this point, I seem to start muttering to myself. So what I'll say is, you have by default the OSD on, which has your call sign, the voltage, and the time. You can turn this all off within one thing called Camera ID. Or you can obviously set it up with your own things. You've got some pick adjust to change colour and stuff like that. You've got a day-night mode, but that's about it. So not much on there really. And then you can just save what you've got and carry on. And that's about all you need to know. Now, as far as exactly what the VTX control was, I tried it on Tramp and I tried it on Smart Audio, and it responded properly to Smart Audio. So use Smart Audio and it's good with this thing. I don't quite know why this doesn't specify quite explicitly what it does, but it doesn't. So, you know, what are you going to do? So here I am, and I'm going to test out the camera by trying to launch this plane. So I was never brilliant at launching this plane, and the first couple didn't go to plan. I basically kept throwing it over and not getting it right. But those couple of failed launches at least taught me where it was going to go, where it was going to talk, and what I need to do to steer out of it. So third time was a charm, except it wasn't really. I just didn't get one of them on the DVR. Anyway, so here we are up and flying, and for the purpose of this camera and VTX recording, we kind of have to ignore the parts of the flying on the wing. I'll come back to the wing on a review at a later date because I've still got some work to do on it. So we're here to judge what the camera looks like and how the VTX is doing. And on first impressions, certainly the camera I'm pretty happy with. We've got a nice sort of even lighting there. It's not too washed out, it's not too oversaturated. The higher lit parts of the sky aren't doing anything to the ground detail, so the dynamic range is very good. What I do notice on this one is I'm getting some noise in the picture. It seems a bit noisy. There's a couple of lines going along. I'm sort of thinking that's maybe from the ESC and this platform. I'm just going to roll this back. This is when I maidened it on a completely different VTX. This is an AKK VTX and a camera from FXT, so the camera's a bit different. But I'm still getting an amount of noise in there, so I'm thinking that this platform is causing some of this rather than the VTX itself. But I was interested to know if this could be solved by upping the power. So after this short flight, I brought it in for a landing and I threw it up again. See, totally getting the hang of these launches now. So I've upped the power here to 200 milliwatts on the VTX, and that seems to have sorted out the bit of noise we were getting. As far as the sort of the fuzziness on the camera goes, we've still got the odd interference line going on, which I think is probably from the ESC. Might be able to tidy that up by looking at where the actual physical wiring's going and stuff. But the general picture seems a lot clearer to me. Now, if you're noticing we're getting a bit of jittery stuff there, that's just an element of how this wing flies. If you're used to quads and thinking this is shaky, is this a bad camera? No, this is how fixed wings fly. The difference between a quad and a plane, whereas a quad is defying gravity, a plane is basically riding the air. It's riding those air currents, and thus it can bounce around a bit. It's going to depend, of course, on the type of wing, the sort of wind you've got, the environment. For example, going down over trees there creates quite turbulent air. But it actually flies quite well, this plane. It wasn't perfect by any means. For example, my iNav setup wasn't right here. Once I put it into a stabilized mode, all it did was turn upside down. So I've got some screw ups there. I need to move my altitude over a touch. But as I said, I'll come to reviewing this plane and how I set it up with iNav as soon as I fix all these problems and sort them out. So yeah, as far as the VTX and the camera goes, once we've got rid of that noise from the 25 milliwatts, and we do seem to be on a bit of a noise platform, I think it's performing very nicely. I can pick out good details. It's nice and sharp. I think the colour's fairly true. It doesn't seem overly saturated or washed out. It's just coming along as quite a nice little camera. So I've got no doubt that this sort of setup will work quite nicely in a quad. You have the camera in the front there, it's a nice little micro package, and the VTX, where you can just pretty much put that wherever it's going to fit in nicely. As far as my flight goes, it didn't end particularly well.
I decided to go a little bit of a full throttle blast into the wind. I suddenly heard the motor cut, the speed drop, but fortunately I managed to glide it over into a field which didn't have cows in it, which is a bit of a relief that I wasn't further away, as the last wing I put in a field of cows got eaten by cows, which wasn't great. So I'll be looking, as I said, looking at this wing some more to try and sort out the little problems I've got there.
Well, the little camera did pretty good, and so did the VTX. As far as the wing went, by the way, after that landing, after the motor appeared to fail, I imagined it was going to be sort of on fire or something. So the first thing I did is I put my hand in over the ESC, checked for heat there, checked for heat on the motor, nothing was there. I got it back to where I was, I started up again and the motor worked fine. So I don't know if we had some sort of, I don't think it was a low voltage shutdown, a thermal shutdown, something like that, or just a motor desync, which maybe I could have got back by putting my throttle all the way back to 0% and going up again. I thought I'd done it, but I noticed when I watched it back, I only went to about 30% before I tried it again and nothing was happening. So yeah, that needs more flying anyway. I've sorted out the INF problem. I'll be back to fly that again, and we will see what happens. Hopefully you like a bit of fixed wing flying as well for a bit of a change. I really enjoy fixed wing as well as quads. I never get to do as much as I want to because they're a bit more hassle to take places. You need a little bit more room to do it, but yeah, I really enjoy it, so expect a bit more there. But the other reason that I wanted to put that on a wing is I wanted to show these cameras will work on any platform you like. Mostly we put them in quads, they're nice and easy to swap around, but they'll equally go into wings or planes. You can stick them on top of RC vehicles like cars or whatever you want to really, and they should all work. So yeah, I quite like the camera. I thought that was a very good image from it. I thought the VTX seemed to be getting a bit of a dodgy display at around 25 milliwatts. Not sure if that was mainly due to the noise on my plane and the platform coming from that ESC there, or whether that was just something in the 25. Warped that up to 200 milliwatts and that was a lot better, although of course depending where you're flying and who you're flying with, that may not be appropriate, so just be aware of that one. But generally speaking, I like the package. Good camera, pretty good VTX. I don't know why it didn't come with its own antenna. That's really weird. You need your own MMCX connector to do something with that. That's the only thing. But you can get them separately as well if you need to. Anyway, this was, and I should point to it even though you can't see it, the Micro Predator V4 along with the VTX in here. These were kindly supplied by Banggood for review, and so there'll be links down below. I'll also link as well to the separate products in case you like the camera and already had a VTX or vice versa. You know the kind of deal. Anyway, hope that was helpful. I'll be back later with some more from the Fluxwing soon, hopefully. And I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.